Come all you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old union has come in here to dwell.
The largest union talk radio program in the South. This is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host is Adam Keller. We've got a packed show today, so not going to be able to take calls, but we can, as always, take your texts, and voicemails at 844-899-TVLR. That is 844-899-8857. You can also leave us a written note at tvlr.fm/contact or hang out with us in any of our various chats. That's on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, etc. All at the Valley Labor Report. We've got a great show for you today. We're going to be talking soon to a Teamster out of South Carolina about how they got management to hire more drivers. Really excited for that conversation. We'll be talking to some rehab nurses about how they were able to beat an anti-union campaign, and that's all in the first half of the program. In the second half of the program, we're going to be talking to an employee at St. John's University in New York, that's a Catholic college, about how their Catholic college is saying that their Catholicism means they can bust unions.
Wow.
Which is pretty crazy. That's not my understanding of Catholic social teaching, but maybe I'm wrong. We'll talk to and we've actually got a really great guest to talk to us about that. That's literally his field of study, is Catholic social teaching as it relates to labor. So we're going to be talking to him about maybe they're right. Maybe he can't have a union because he's a Catholic. We'll see. And then we're going to be talking to a union member from Minneapolis about how he got spied on by the feds.
Awful. But
crazy.
I'm really looking forward to hearing some firsthand reports today. We got some great guests.
We do. We've got some great guests. Really excited for it. First up, though, there's been a bunch of conversation about school choice in the news. Adam, it's a conversation that you're following very, very closely. What's kind of been the latest?
Well, I've seen your buddy, Dale Jackson, talking about it quite a bit lately. Yeah, well, I've seen it circulating in right-wing media. It's becoming a big topic of discussion in the gubernatorial race here in Alabama. For those of you listening outside of the state, we have former Senator Doug Jones challenging current Senator Tommy Tuberville. And so school choice has already become an issue in that campaign. And I'm seeing a lot of, chatter online about it. ProPublica just put out a really great investigation on private schools down in Florida over the past week. I recommend people check that out. But yeah, I just been thinking about it.
Isn't the guy who is presumably going to be the Republican nominee, Byron Donalds, didn't his wife run a scam, private school, something or other?
I don't know. I feel like that's worth looking into. Yeah.
I'll see if I can find.
Yeah, see if you can find something on that. That sounds really sketchy. Yeah, the ProPublica piece was really good. Definitely recommend folks check that out. But yeah, I've just been seeing all this chatter about it, and my thoughts are that I don't think the education of our society's children should be a consumable product that we buy and sell in the marketplace. And most families, the overwhelming majority, they agree with me on this. Most of us, we want our local public schools to be great, regardless of our zip code, where we live, where we come from. We just want our local public schools to be as good as possible, right? I don't think most people want to go shopping in the Wild West marketplace exchange of educating our children, which we're seeing pop up in Arizona and Florida and states like that. Maybe this is a hot take. Tell me if I go too far, Jacob, but I think we live in a society and there is such a thing as the common good, right? The social contract. And I get that free market fundamentalists in both major political parties want us to think that we're all atomized individual consumers in every aspect of our life. But any society, especially one that at least pretends to be democratic, has a vested interest in educating the next generation. We all have a vested interest in making sure that educators are well trained and supported. We all have a vested interest in making sure that curriculum is reflective of the population, that is backed by research and grounded in reality. Hot take, I know. We all have a vested interest in widespread literacy and numeracy. I've seen some really concerning statistics lately about adult literacy rates in the United States of America. It's not good, folks. We all have a vested interest in providing every kid the best opportunities we can for them to grow and to develop. And it's really not just about my kid or your kid. It's literally about all of us. And I know for me personally, I don't think I'm better than anyone else, and I don't think anyone else is better than me. So, what I want for my kid, my family, I want for everybody's family. If folks believe that homeschool or private school is genuinely what's best for their kids, that is what it is. You've always had that choice, and I'll respect it. I just don't think public tax dollars should subsidize it. What's stopping private schools from offering more of their own scholarships for poor and working class kids? If that's really what it's about, right? Because we hear that a lot. It's about providing a choice for those underserved kids, right? So that they can have access to these elite private schools. Well, let's be honest, right? Rich folks, they could pay for that right now. They don't need public schools resources to do that. So, and this is part of a broader assault on public institutions across our society, an assault that's been growing and growing for decades at this point and is really reaching a fever pitch right now with this current environment, right, where we have a lot of what some may say would be crooks and grifters and reactionaries in many places of power. These are some of the same folks who want to privatize the education system, both from the inside and the outside. They're also some of the same folks who want to privatize the Postal Service. Some of the same folks who brought us Doge and the sabotage of our federal workforce. Some of the same folks who want to privatize Social Security. Basically, these are some of the same folks who are kicking our butt in the class war. What's next? Are we going to say, oh, well, the local parks and recs, they're not good enough for me and my family. So instead of making it better, let's give me a voucher for the local country club. Right? I know it sounds kind of crazy, but that is the same premise, right? And the logic never really works for the other side. They never extend these arguments to the other side because the far right always says that they don't agree with public schools and what they teach. So they shouldn't have to pay for it, right? They shouldn't have to contribute taxes for it. But just think about that. We don't get to opt out of paying taxes for all sorts of things that we don't agree with, right? Our government does all kinds of things that I don't like. I don't get a refund on it because I disagree with it. Now, Lord knows public schools aren't perfect, especially here in the South. But we can point to systemic policy failures and generations of underinvestment to explain these flaws and these challenges. Much of it pushed by these very same folks who are pushing privatization. That's how it works, right? You starve and sabotage a public institution and public good. You set up its workers to struggle, and then you artificially induce demand for these private alternatives. Public schools are too important to give up on. If you're an education worker, you need to get involved. You need to get your local involved and bring it into the fight. Run for AEA, NEA, AFT delegate, volunteer in a committee or as a building rep, and educate your colleagues. Bring them into the fight with you. Because education unions are uniquely positioned to be powerful institutions, and it's going to be up to rank and file militancy from the bottom up to make that happen. Here in the South, we desperately need it. And for everyone listening, regardless of your role or relationship to schools, whether you're an educator, a student, a parent, an uncle, a grandmother, a community activist, just a neighbor, anyone, pay attention to what's happening in public education. Pay attention to your local school boards. Pay attention to who's running for state school board elections. Pay attention to how legislators have voted on public school issues. And get involved with groups like Public School Strong and Alliance to Reclaim Our Schools, other great organizations out there already doing the work, right? Get plugged in because we're not alone. The other side has a far-right media ecosystem, a network of churches and think tanks and lobbyists and everything else that the billionaires can buy. But we've got the people, and there's strength in numbers. It's up to us to build a grassroots movement for honest, equitable, fully funded public education. A diverse movement for the common good. A movement that can fight and win the public schools our students and communities deserve. And there's a lot else out there about school choice. And the last thing I'll say about it is that schools choose their students under school choice, right? Mm-hmm. It's not your choice.
Right.
It's not your family's choice. It's the school's choice. So it's not school choice. It's school's choice. That's what it's really about, right? And when you follow the money, you find interest in profiteering and segregation. Segregation not just by race, but by class, religion, you name it. So, that's what our side is up against. But as I said, the vast majority of people believe in public schools. They want their public schools to be great. And that's why I'm confident that when we organize, that we can do that. We can make these schools better, and they do need to be better. But we can bring that kind of justice to these schools when we come together and organize.
You mentioned Florida, and yeah, Byron Donalds' wife, Erica Donalds, in the state of Florida, is a big, she's got a stake in private school contractor. She's made millions of dollars from being a contractor for these private schools. CBS had a report out, I think this was last year, that 30% of the government funding that private schools in the state of Florida received, totaling about $35 million, went to outside contracting firms.
Wow.
And one of the schools that Erica Donalds led announced that it would not be opening as planned in August. They made that announcement on May 31st, basically in June. And so there were hundreds of schools, dozens and dozens of teachers that had been hired, had enrolled, had moved to that location to go to school there, and then were totally left in the lurch because of the fact that school didn't open. And that's something that happens, not infrequently in the private school industry, because you get these sort of pop-up shops that want to take advantage of the government money that's there and will close when they don't make as much as they wanted, or when there's an opportunity to make even more money somewhere else, or when there's a natural disaster that kind of shakes the physical foundation of the institution. And these are all things that just don't happen with public schools in the same way. You have much less stability and real the ability to trust in these as institutions, because they're not institutions. They're just companies that are in it for a profit, as opposed to institutions that are built by their communities for the good of the communities. And, like we say with unions, the public school system is an institution that is made up of people, and so there are going to be problems with it. But the idea that the response to legitimate issues with the public school system is to create the separate system of profit where fly-by-night contractors can come in and make a quick buck off of the education, or lack thereof, of our people. The idea that that's the solution to the problems in the public school system is just nonsensical. And I think that the more that we see this over and over across the country playing out, the more people are starting to realize the folly in those sorts of actions, in turning to the market, in turning to for-profit companies as the solution.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, the solution is more democracy, not less democracy. Right. It's less profiteering, not more profiteering. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I wanted to point out that I think it was Kentucky that just recently in the last year or so voted down vouchers in a pretty significant way, including in predominantly Republican districts. So I think the more people learn about it, the less enthused they are. I know that there's an argument by the right that, oh, well, look how many people are using it. Like, there's clearly demand. Well, anytime you put money on the table for people, there will be people to show up for it, right? And again, that is by design. That is by design that there's demand for alternatives. The solution is to make every local public school as great as it possibly can be, give it the resources it needs. That's the answer. And
yeah, well, I mean, and there was a recent report that came out of Texas, like just in the last week, I think, or in the last 2 weeks, that showed, and they've been engaging in this, the voucher scam experimentation. 70% of the people who have taken advantage of those vouchers were families whose students were already in the private school system. Already there. And so all this money is doing, it's not actually, the propaganda, the argument is that, oh, well, we're just having the money follow the student. That's not actually what's happening. Most of the people taking advantage of these programs are not students that were in the public school system and left. It's people who are already out of the system. And so it's sucking money from the public education system and going towards private, religious, homeschooled companies that have no oversight.
Right, no guardrails. Like, you want me to believe that, okay, our public schools have issues, so the solution is a totally unregulated marketplace?
Yeah.
When has that ever worked for any problem that we have? I mean, we have people, like, on the toilet because they ate lettuce right now. Because of this kind of mentality, okay? Because of this kind of mentality that, oh, well, the public institutions have these issues, so this defund them, this bust up the workers' unions, this attack the employees who do the work, this put grifters in charge of it and sabotage it. Oh, look, it's not working as we planned. Oh, no.
Yeah, it's completely ridiculous. We've got some elections coming up here in Huntsville that are relevant to this issue. The school board elections are coming up, as are the city council elections. Adam, what are some of the things that you've been seeing about those elections here in the city of Huntsville?
Yeah, just to remind folks, there are 3 districts that are facing elections in Huntsville on August 25th, which will be here very, very soon. It is, less than 2 weeks away. So make sure you are registered. Make sure you've checked your polling place. You know where to go on Tuesday, August 25th from 7 to 7. If you realize that you're not going to be able to vote in person like you're supposed to from 7 to 7, try to get an absentee ballot. All right. That's still an option. That's something you can do. If you know you're going to be out of town, go ahead, vote absentee. So there are 3 districts. District 4, I believe it is, will not have a school board race because Ryan Renaud did not face opposition. But the other 2 districts do have school board races, and they also have city council races. So District 4 is Bill Kling. He has 2 challengers. We also have the South Huntsville District, District 3. Jenny Robinson is the longtime incumbent, and she's facing 2 challengers as well. In District 2, the incumbent David Little is facing a challenger, Thomas Cassez. So one thing I saw that's been interesting online, I know that current school board member for District 3, the South Huntsville District, Andrea Alvarez, she has been sharing a lot of information on Facebook about the city council. She's got a bee in her bonnet about some of the issues they've had with between the school board and the city over the years. So she's been speaking out about that. And, something I saw from Jenny Robinson's campaign was that they were concerned about special interest involved in this election. And so I thought that was interesting. And, I started looking at some of the campaign finance reports, and it's interesting to see who is receiving big PAC money, as well as who is using, the same consulting firm The same consulting firm, the Driscoll Group, has managed many campaigns in Huntsville over the years. I first encountered them over 10 years ago. At the time, the Driscoll Group was very aligned with Casey Wardynski, who was the superintendent of Huntsville at the time. Ran all the pro-Wardynski campaigns for school board, as well as, had affiliations with Jenny Robinson and others on the city council. So been around for a long time, kind of considered the establishment person for campaigning and politicking. So, that's who Jenny Robinson is using. Again, you can look at the campaign finance reports. They are available. It takes a little digging, but you can find some of that information. And Andrea has been posting some of that information. So, it's out there for your research. I would also say the United Women of Color put out a great voting guide that's very helpful. Because a lot of people don't know exactly what city council, does from day to day, or what the school board is really responsible for. So I think that's a great resource, and I encourage people to check that out. It's going to be interesting to see, because it's kind of a, older establishment candidates versus younger, kind of upstart grassroots candidates. We'll see how it turns out. There seems to be a trend in the country right now for change. Whether that will translate into August 25th elections in Huntsville, I don't know. But there's been a lot of chatter online about some of the issues folks are, facing with the city. One issue I saw that was brought up was the lack of, public comment participation at city council meetings, which has been restricted over the years. And I remember them restricting that at school board meetings as well. Formerly you were able to actually ask questions during the board's work sessions, which was very helpful and illuminating for people in the audience, obviously. And that was taken away. And instead you had to, fill out a form, and they'd give you 3 minutes at the end once the cameras were off, that kind of vibe. And I think, good governance and just local transparency is something that really cuts across partisan lines. I think most people want to feel like they can have their voices heard with local government, and they want people to, have that opportunity, want to have that input, and they want folks to be transparent in their decision making. So, those are some of the issues that I've seen circulating. But again, August 25th, that is the big day for those districts. Typically, these are pretty low turnout elections, so make sure you do remind your friends, your coworkers, your neighbors, text some folks that the day before, ask them what their plan is to vote, because it's very, very influential. When not a lot of folks vote, it's important to bring your voice to the table, because, it's kind of hell of a note to think about. Less than 10% maybe could decide the election. And these people are there for 4 years, or maybe 20 years or 30 years in some cases, right? Like, that's kind of wild.
Yeah.
For the biggest city in the state.
Mm-hmm. No, these are super important, super important elections. No matter what your political proclivities are, you really need to take the time to go and take a look at the candidates, take a look at why different organizations have endorsed which candidates. Go to a candidate forum if you can. Watch the candidate forums online if you're not able to go in person. Because, like Adam said, Huntsville, biggest city in the state of Alabama, tens of millions of dollars are determined by the budget of this city. The wages and working conditions of the people who are employed by this city are determined by the city council.
Boards and commissions.
The people who run institutions in the city of Huntsville, people who run the hospital, are determined in small part, but in part by the city council. People who, the economic development is led in huge part by the city council and the people that the city council hire. So you want people who are, in my mind, you would want people who are dedicated, yes, to growth, but to responsible growth, not growth at any cost, to grow that are committed to growth that will help the people who are already living here and making sure that folks can continue to live in the city of Huntsville. You want, affordable housing. You want, utility prices to stay reasonable.
Childcare is another big issue that we hear a lot from folks. Childcare is getting more and more expensive day by day, and it's a real big barrier for folks who are trying to enter the workforce, re-enter the workforce, maybe after childbirth, right? It's something that really weighs on a lot of working families. And I know it's been a big issue in a lot of cities and a lot of, even in the city of New York, right? That was a big issue in their mayoral campaign. Because it touches so many families. And, I know there are some folks listening who maybe don't have children, or maybe their children are full grown and it's been a long time. Ask folks who are using childcare right now, ask them how much it's costing them. Ask them how much it's costing them per week or per month. Lord help you if you don't have grandparents, aunts, uncles, other people who can help out and chip in. If it's 5 days a week you're paying for childcare, it's almost, a mortgage payment for a lot of folks. And so that's a huge barrier.
And I'll say on the child care thing, I've gotten some pushback from city council members, even city council members that I really like and that are generally friends of unions. And I don't think it's bad-natured pushback, but it is pushback that I disagree with. The pushback is that, that there's not really much that the city council can do with child care. And that's something that kind of families or organizations or employers that's like on them. That's outside. There's not anything that the city council can do. And I just disagree with that. I don't think that's right. I think that the city council can, I think that there are lots of things that the city council can do to induce affordable childcare. You can, at the very bottom of the list, you can think about tax incentives and tax breaks that we give to huge corporations all the time.
Right.
like
Eli Lilly.
Yes.
Big Pharma is getting a huge package, right? And I'm still looking into all the details of that. But my understanding is they're getting a heck of a deal. Fairly profitable corporations, my understanding. Are there any strings attached to providing childcare for their employees or the surrounding community? I don't know. Just asking questions. But.
Exactly. And so like at the very bottom of the list, you could do tax breaks, tax incentives to induce that sort of things. You could give tax incentives and tax breaks to companies that offer on-site childcare or childcare vouchers. And then I think at the more experimental wing, and the thing that's I think is the most obvious thing to do would be to expand childcare, make pre-K universal, expand childcare through the public school system, and offer universal free public childcare through increases in property and income taxes. Now in the state of Alabama, that does take the approval of the legislature, but there are you can at the very least put it on the table. And I think that something that potentially would be difficult for the legislature to shoot down would be framing it as an experiment. You could say, okay, look, in the city of Huntsville, we are going to raise property taxes and income taxes by this, and it would be a very small percentage, by this very small percentage for a temporary amount of time, for 2 years. We'll vote on it at the beginning. If the citizens vote it down, it doesn't go through. And then we'll vote on it again at the end. We'll have this 2-year experiment where we have universal pre-K, we have universal 3K or whatever we want to do, maybe not all the way down to 6 months old, but something like that. And at the end of 2 years, we'll let the citizens vote on it again and see if they think they got a good use of their money. I think that so many people and so many institutions are just not willing to experiment enough in unions, in government, in companies. And I think that the moment the cost of childcare calls for experimentation and willingness to do something bold, and that's just not something that I'm hearing, frankly, from basically anybody.
The cost of everything calls for bold solutions right now. The time we're in calls for bold solutions right now, so I would encourage folks to use their imagination, right? Imagine that we can do these things and that we actually do deserve these things, and we should try to move closer to it, right? Yeah. And there are so many opportunities to be experimental. I really agree with that.
We're heading into a break. You're listening to the Valley Labor Report. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
The attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have stood with the working people of Alabama for over 40 years, providing skilled legal representation for your workplace injury claims. When you are injured on the job, it can be a scary time. The attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have the experience to guide you through the process to make sure that you and your family are properly taken care of and your rights are protected. If you need help, call the attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs at 855-617-9333 or visit online at www.mtnj.com. No representation is made that the quality of legal services provided is greater than the quality of legal services provided by other law firms.
Support for the Valley Labor Report comes from the International Federation of Professional and Technical Engineers Union. Learn more by visiting www.ifpte.org.
Are you looking for a better future, a career that can have you set for life, and to be a part of something that's bigger than yourself? If you are, then consider a skilled trades apprenticeship with the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades. The work of IUPAT is all around us, from the industrial painters who work on the bridges to drywall finishers, floor coverers, the glazers who install the glass in our skylines, and so much more. With an IUPAT apprenticeship, you earn while you learn and receive benefits while learning the trade, including a pension. We provide world-class education free of charge. That's right, no student debt. Our starting salaries for apprentices that graduate is above the national median salary with benefits for entire families. And you have the flexibility to take your trade wherever you'd like in the country to work. IUPAT District Council 77 covers our entire region, so give Adam Booth a call at 205-603-3142 for more information. Again, that phone number is 205-603-3142. Come build a better future with us today and join IUPAT.
We're the nurses, firefighters, and claims representatives that help keep our government services running. We respond to natural disasters. We care for our nation's veterans, and we investigate discrimination in the workplace. We are federal and D.C. government workers, and we are proud to serve the American people. Working in more than 70 agencies across the government, we know we can fulfill our mission because our union has our back. Learn more at afge.org. Paid for by the American Federation of Government Employees, AFL-CIO.
Since 1889, the National Association of Letter Carriers has protected the rights of city carriers as they deliver the mail and offer support for their community. The Alabama State Association of Letter Carriers makes their legislative voices heard when it comes to issues involving the U.S. Postal Service and the working members of the union. The National Association of Letter Carriers has been longtime supporters of the Muscular Dystrophy Association and the Stamp Out Hunger Food Drive. This message is sponsored by the Alabama Association of Letter Carriers. To learn more, visit NALC.org. Unite Here is also a supporter of the Valley Labor Report. They are a labor union that represents 300,000 working people across Canada and the United States. Their members work in the hotel, gaming, food service, manufacturing, textile, distribution, laundry, transportation, and airport industries. You can learn more about Unite Here at unitehere.org.
Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell. How the good old union has come in here to dwell.
A battle in the heart of Alabama caught our attention. Coal miners in one community, they've been on strike now for months.
Working as long as 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, in some of the most dangerous conditions.
I really think that the labor movement is the single greatest force for democracy in the history of the United States.
The story of Alabama is a story of not just resilience, but of militancy.
I say no contract, you say no code. No contract, no contract.
If we ain't all free, ain't none of us free.
You're listening to Alabama's only union talk radio show, The Valley Labor Report, with Adam Keller and Jacob Morrison.
That's right, folks. From the mountains of Tennessee to the bayous of Louisiana, broadcasting online and on the radio from the heart of the Tennessee Valley, the Spice Radio Studios in Huntsville, Alabama. This is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host is Adam Keller. We just talked about school choice and the Huntsville elections. If you missed it, you can find our stream, the Valley Labor Report, at Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and go back and watch the first part of the program. We are going to be talking soon to a Teamster in South Carolina who got UPS to hire more workers, and then we'll be talking to nursing home workers in Minnesota about how they beat back the boss's anti-union campaign. If you'd like to leave us a voicemail or send us a text, you can do that at 844-899-TVLR, or send us a note at tvlr.fm/contact. If you haven't gotten enough of us by the time that we wrap up here on the radio, or if you just want to see what we're up to throughout the week, you can find us anywhere you find anything online, in particular on our website, tvlr.fm, but we're also on Facebook, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts, all at the Valley Labor Report. Just a reminder, your support helps us stay on the air. A huge portion of our revenue comes directly from our listeners, so if you want to become a sustaining donor to the program or just make a one-time donation, you can go to patreon.com/thevalleylaborreport or tvlr.fm/donate. We've got a bunch of cool merch for sale at tvlr.fm/store, and finally, if you're a member of a union, then you should get your local, your district, your region, or your international to sponsor the show. You can reach out to us for more details on that.
Hey y'all, let me add a disclaimer that any viewpoints or opinions expressed in this program belong solely to their author and do not necessarily represent any organization or sponsor. We want to welcome all of our listeners, whether you're on YouTube, Facebook, WVNN, WZZA, WHIV, WGOW, WMSP, WCPT, KTNF, Means TV, or through your favorite podcast app. And we are proud to be part of the Labor Radio Podcast Network and encourage our listeners to check that out at laborradionetwork.org. Finally, as most of you know, we are not media professionals, just a few diehard unionists who want to amplify the voices of the working class. We're hoping this project can make a difference on this front, and we can't do it without you. So we want to thank everyone for tuning in. Whether you're a loyal fan or first-time listener, we appreciate you spending some time with us.
Every week in the South, workers organize new unions, they bargain for new contracts, they fight for good legislation and against bad legislation, and they put the boss in their place. These are some of the stories that we could find last week from August 7th to the 14th. This is Last Week in Southern Labor. Over the last week, 479 workers in 12 bargaining units have gone public with their union campaigns. 103 workers across 4 bargaining units withdrew their petition for a union election. 104 workers across 4 bargaining units unionized, and 20 workers in 1 bargaining unit voted against unionization. Here are the details in new campaigns. 58 workers at St. Martin's in the Pines, a retirement community in Birmingham, Alabama, filed a petition to hold a union election with friends of the show, the Retail, Wholesale, and Department Store Union, RWDSU, Mid-South Council. 85 workers at RATP Dev Incorporated, a transit system contractor in Asheville, North Carolina, filed a petition to hold a union election with the Amalgamated Transit Union, ATU, Local 128. The employer filed a petition for a union election after a majority of the 167 workers at Mid-Atlantic Division of Kroger in Virginia Beach, Virginia, demonstrated support for unionization with the United Food and Commercial Workers, UFCW, Local 400. 80 workers at Laboratory Corporation of America in Tucker, Georgia, filed a petition to hold a union election with the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades, IUPAT, District Council 77. In election results, 29 workers at All Voting is Local in Washington, D.C. withdrew their petition for a union election with the Washington-Baltimore News Guild, TNG-CWA 32035. Hopefully, they got voluntary recognition. 11 workers at MV Transportation in Augusta, Georgia voted 10-1 in favor of unionization with the Teamsters, Local 528. 17 workers at Brentag Mid-South in Richmond, Virginia voted 11-5 in favor of unionization with the Teamsters, Local Local 592. 20 workers at Starbucks in Suffolk, Virginia voted 8-9 against unionization, with Starbucks workers united. In strikes and bargaining updates, non-union auto workers in Alabama went on strike. A worker at the Mazda Toyota plant in Huntsville wrote about the incident for the Daily Struggle, a publication of the group continuing to call themselves UAWD. In the piece, the worker wrote about how workers in a section of the plant went on a spontaneous strike after management called for mandatory overtime against company policy. Workers in other sections of the plant, in response to this mandatory overtime, organized a work to rule. That's a tactic where workers intentionally follow every letter of every rule in the plant to slow down production. The worker shares reflections on how this sort of anger at the indignity imposed on workers by management could fuel an organizing wave if the union is willing to capitalize on it. Another public college in Alabama just followed the lead of Auburn, dissolving its faculty senate and eliminating even the small token of faculty input into the direction of the university. This time, it's Jacksonville State in where else but Jacksonville, Alabama. This may backfire, though, as Jacksonville State probably has the strongest United Campus Workers UCW-CWA chapter in the state, and the union is capitalizing on the move, encouraging faculty to join the union, as now that's the only option for winning a voice and power on the job. In political and legislative updates, the AFL-CIO's annual Executive Pay Watch report is out, and as usual, it's not good. They found that in 2025, S&P 500 CEOs took home an average pay of $22.8 million. That's 312 times the median wage of U.S. workers, up from a measly 285 times the median wage of workers in 2024. In 1 year, the average S&P 500 CEO got a 21% raise, making this the highest level of executive pay ever, and all of that is without including Elon Musk's outrageous $158 billion pay package, which would have significantly skewed the data on its own. Musk made $2,522,203 times what the median Tesla employee made last year. Trump got a huge raise himself, raking in $2.2 billion in income, a 254% increase in his income from the last year. Workers' share of the U.S. national income fell to its lowest level since World War II. If we missed something, let us know. You can send us a note at tvlr.fm/contact, and we'll try to include it in next week's roundup. Subscribe to the newsletter at tvlr.fm, and you'll get the exhaustive version of Last Week in Southern Labor in your inbox, mostly every week. We've got our guest on the line. John Gacy is a member of the Teamsters Local 509 in South Carolina, also a member of Teamsters for a Democratic Union. John, welcome to the Valley Labor Report.
Hey, man, it's a pleasure being here with you, brother.
It's great having you on the show. We met actually a couple months ago. I didn't realize when I was reaching out to you. We even took a picture together, and I didn't remember it. But I'm really excited to have you on the program. Glad we were able to get you on so soon after we met at Labor Notes a couple of months ago. Yeah, and you wrote a piece for Labor Notes and TDU about winning more full-time driver positions in your local. It's a huge win. People should really check out the piece. We're not going to be able to get to everything in it, so go to labornotes.org and read it. And I want to get into that, but before we do that, can you tell me a little bit of the backstory of the piece? Specifically, you talk about how temporary drivers were made permanent after the new contract, but then, a few years later, management refused to replace drivers as they left or retired. Can you talk to us about the backstory, like, how, things leading up to this campaign at Local 509?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. I'll start by saying, from the perspective of many members, including myself, it appears that the company for a long time has always wanted to create a part-time drivers versus full-time drivers. At one point before this contract that we're in now, we had it was a full-time position, but it was called a 224. It was like a hybrid tier type driver where these guys would work in the building, they would drive, they would do everything under the sun, outside of shaking the building for loose change, I guess. But they did some of everything. Luckily, with this new contract under the direction of our general president, Sean O'Brien, we were able to get rid of the 224 tier system. And then once that happened, we saw where, in our building, there was a couple of hires, but all of a sudden it just seemed like it just dwindled and we weren't getting any hires. So that's kind of where the story starts. And from that point, it just seemed like if we lost drivers, it would be they weren't replacing them, and we just saw the workload increase. So.
Right. And you said that, you're losing people and so the workload is increasing. Can you talk a little bit about what that was like on a day-to-day basis, sort of, the increase in hours, the increase in work that people are required to do, and why that, irritated people?
Yeah. So, it's, I'll say, my building, I'll say all Teamsters, whether you're with UPS or, in the nursing, we're all extremely hard workers, like all laborers, and, we already have this huge workload. And then you get to this point where, you're losing drivers, whether it be, they're resigning, not very many terminations because we typically take care of that on the union side. But, you would lose these drivers and these workloads increasing, and you had members getting so frustrated because here you're in a situation where, you may be delivering your route and you're typically used to maybe being able to get through your truck somewhat. And now it's getting worse where the truck's packed. You can't get through the truck. Probably the load's going down, so it just ended up being where, you have members that are so frustrated and at their wits' end. And we even had members that resigned over that because of the workload getting so heavy.
And so that was the impetus for fighting management around this issue. Can you tell us what the mechanisms that you took advantage of in the contract are for fighting like what were the clauses in the contract that you were able to utilize to push management to hire more drivers?
Okay, yeah, absolutely. Let me start by saying, what people I like to just bring home is that this is a collective action. It's it takes more than just one person. We're all very strong and powerful in our own rights, but together we're that unstoppable force. And so, fortunately for me, I have a great co-shop steward. Got to shout him out, Russell Sires. I appreciate him. He's a 28-year vet. And 28 years doing this job is absolutely amazing. And he still has that love to make sure that, jobs are being filled, people aren't losing their jobs. And so together, we looked at the contract and we have mechanisms, like, for example, your 9-5 protections. It's the average workday is 9.5 hours. So you have the 9.5 hours and they are not allowed to work you more than 3 days or more than 2 days of that 9-5. So if you go 3 days over in a week, 9-5, then we can file these grievances for penalty pay. There's also 8-hour requests where you request 8 hours for, so you're not out there all night long. There's also 8-hour guarantees. And there's also, we have in our contract where you have air drivers and you have our full-time drivers, and they have to work within their classification. So air drivers deliver air, ground drivers can deliver ground and air. So all these things are provided for us to, keep track of work, make sure work is going in appropriate places. But you have to enforce the contract and file those grievances in order to make that happen.
And so that's what you started doing. You started filing grievances every chance you got, every time management was violating the contract. Can you tell us how that started and how did management respond?
So, it started between, me and Russell, and we, first I'd like to say, one of my things is always Teamster made and TDU raised. And I say that because, TDU is one of those things that as an organization, they gave me the understanding and the fundamentals on how to move, how to file these grievances, how to have record keeping. And so we did those things. Also, we had conversations with members like, hey, this is what's happening. This is what we need to do. And so from that point, as management would see the grievances coming in, I would have conversations where they would say, things like, we know what you're trying to do. It's not going to work. I think they're pigeonholed in their box because they have to answer to corporate. So it's one of those things where, it really doesn't matter what they say in that sense. And they would also do things to try to divide us, and that's always can be discouraging to some members. But, at the end of the day, it's about the members and us, again, doing that collective action so we can move forward and progress.
And so, you mentioned that management was kind of pushing back and telling you, this isn't going to work. And really, like you said, I think it's important for people to remember in a lot of these cases that the first line supervisors, even the second line supervisors, like you said, they're sort of boxed into a hole themselves. And so for them to even be able to help themselves and help their own facility work better, they sort of need the union to push them and get them to a place where the upper level management has no choice but to say yes to what the union wants and what even in many cases the first line supervisor wants, because that's going to be, getting more people, getting the appropriate amount of staffing is going to make it easier for them to do their job, right? And so they need
absolutely.
They need you to push them to make it so that upper management can't say no.
Yeah, actually, we always say a grievance is nothing more than a question. So we're asking this question to get a better understanding. Are you violating my rights? And that's the philosophy, and that's what we stand by.
And so, unfortunately, though, it did seem like your first or second line supervisors were not sort of taking the position that like, yeah, I want you to push me. I want you to make me do this. They fought back. And one of the things that they tried to do was divide up the unit and try to pit the people who are filing grievances against some of the people that were, doing work outside of their classification. Can you talk to us about how management tried to divide people up?
Yeah, absolutely. I always say that, you have a perception of, what's going on and, perspective. And there was a lot of perception as far as, management would say, we'd have these meetings and they would say, well, these air drivers, you can't get this overtime because we can't allow you to do the full-time drivers' work. Full-time drivers, I'm sorry, we can't have the air drivers come out and bring you work, that was left in the building because, you have to take the work with you now because that's your work. And you can even, I've had some as far as go out and say, hey, this is because of your stewards. This is why this is happening. This is why your day's more uncomfortable than it should have been, that worked, on some, and I can't blame them because, again, like I said earlier, I mean, there's so much work and, people want to just do their job, get the fair decency and respect that they deserve, go home to their families. So, I understood that people would be frustrated with us, but we had to change people's perception and make it the union perspective. And that is, no, it's not our fault. It's not our fault that you're getting loaded down with work. We need to hire more. They need to hire more people. It's not our fault that you're out here all night long. We got to file grievances, to ask those questions. Are we being violated? So, it was a work in progress, but, this is over a span of a year. So, it's, you can't, it's like I always say, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. So, you have to work at it.
I think something that I found really, what's the word? Like encouraging and really cool that you said that you did in the article was when you started getting pushback from some of the members who were being told by management that your filing of grievances is negatively impacting these workers. When you started to get pushback, you started to get people angry at you for doing this really important work, you didn't sort of cut them off. You didn't withdraw into a silo of just union supporters. You continue to communicate with people and keep that line of communication open and continue to talk to these people. Can you talk to us about, maybe how difficult that is? I mean, I mentioned at the top, you're in South Carolina, and so in South Carolina, as in a lot of places in the South, there's a real anti-union sort of individualist culture that we have to push back against. And that requires hard conversations with people who, at least at the beginning of campaigns like this, may not understand and may not agree with what we're doing. But that doesn't mean that we have the luxury of being able to cut them off, right?
That's correct. One of the biggest obstacles, and I still deal with today, the union is looked at as some third party entity. Mm-hmm. So it's like, the workers, then you have management, then you have the union. And I'm constantly having to say, no, you are the union. We are the union together. As the union is a mechanism, and we're a part of that mechanism, and we're all very vital and important to that. And that's always a conversation that I have to have. And also, it's about education. And we are consistently trying to educate other members, and make them understand. Like, we had members that were talking about going to the hall and getting us kicked out of the union, all these things, and it's like, and you get frustrated, but then when you hear things like that, you're like, no, I just have a lot of work to do, and I got to stay the course. And that's what's important. We got to get these people to understand, how unions are important, how, that you have weekends off, you have pension, you have health care because of your union, and because of brothers, sisters, all your siblings that fought prior to you and that are still fighting, that's the reason why you have the rights that you have now. And we have to continue to fight, or they'll erode those rights. And then next thing you know, we're in a really bad position. So when you think about it in that aspect, you move forward. And also there's this thing of, there's a target on my back. If I file these grievances, management has this target on my back, and, they're going to come after me, and they're going to follow me. They're going to ride with me. And you have to lead by example, in the sense of, like, we file the grievances, and, management might ride with us. And I tell people, like, it's not a target on your back. They're doing their job, because we asked this question of, are we being violated? And so now they have to follow up to see, are they doing the job that they say they're doing? If you're doing the job you say you're doing, guess what? They're riding with you. There's no, I tell them all the time, like, hey, just like, I'm much older. My kids are much older now, but when they were younger, the kids get in the car. I do the same thing with management. I say, hey, put on your seatbelt. Let's go. We got things to do. That's what it is. It's not, they can't hurt you. So if you're doing your job, you're good to go.
And so you're doing this campaign of when people are working outside their classification, people are being forced to work more than they should be according to the contract. You're filing all these grievances. You're doing this for a year. What was the turning point where you get, a majority or supermajority of your coworkers on board with this campaign, and rank and file people start filing their own grievances, and people who were initially antagonistic to this campaign started participating in it? Talk to us about that turning point and what the difference was.
Okay, yeah, great question. I'll say that for me, it was, as I mentioned to you earlier, they teach us that having a core is really important. And that core are the most important people, the strongest members that have the same thought process as you. And so, my core, shout them out, Siblings of Solidarity. I had to name them because they're amazing. Probably the best core out here. That having those guys help me relay that message to the other members was so important, and it was so vital to what we were doing. And also, again, like I said, leading by example. So, members start seeing that, okay, wait, the guys that are filing grievances, it looks like, they're starting to move work off of them, and, they're trying to figure out ways to make that work, because, one of our things in our contract is after you get 5 9/5s, you are on this elevated list where they have to make sure that you don't violate. And another beautiful thing is, you know, this one-on-one communication, one-on-one structure, something that the IBT promotes as well, where, you know, you have your business agent, and your business agent is passing information to the members and or the stewards, and the stewards are passing information to the members. You know, that's a great thing as well. We have a business agent that came on not too long ago, and he's a fighter. He doesn't like to get a lot of acknowledgement, so I'm not going to say his name. I'm just going to say we appreciate Bird. He's a fighter, and that's important to have. You have that person that's at the hall, and when he comes to the building, people see him and they realize, oh, okay, we have somebody has our back, and maybe we can give this a shot because we're getting this support. We see the support, we see the effect, and these things are actually happening where these guys are getting work taken off their truck and they're getting to go home and spend time with their family. So that whole collective action is where that's what we saw the tides turn.
Absolutely. And so what was the outcome of this campaign ultimately? What were you able to force management to do?
Brother, the fight still goes on. But we do see, there are members that are on the elevated list, and that's so they're seeing the work being moved off their trucks. We also, like I said, had the 12 drivers that were hired. And, the beautiful thing is in our entire local, there's other members that filed and they got jobs as well. So I think there was like a total of 21 jobs in our entire local. Can't speak too much on that. I just know the number, but I'm sure there's some other folks that would love to talk to you about it. But yeah, it's really seeing the jobs come in, seeing now drivers being qualified for those jobs. And some of the guys that were part-time are transitioning into those full-time jobs, which is going to be, a new career for them because now you're full-time and you have access to full-time pension and, all those different things. So, that's the beautiful part of this, creating jobs, and members are now being able to provide more for their families and, so on and so forth.
Absolutely. I mean, life-changing, amounts of money going from part-time to full-time at UPS. In 4 years under this contract, they'll be up to like $45, $48 an hour. So
talk to me, man.
Yeah. Huge. And from, $21, $22, $23 an hour. So, and then on top of the hourly rate, you obviously have the pension and the health care. So really exciting stuff, a testament to the value of enforcing the contract and how just getting a good contract, getting good words on a page is not enough. It has to be enforced, and it has to be enforced everywhere. Because if y'all had not done this big, campaign, then people would not have gotten these jobs. More folks would have gotten taken advantage of. They would have been getting paid less money than they deserve under the contract for the work that they were doing. The company would have been able to scrape all of that money that is now going to the workers into the profits and the pockets of their shareholders. And so, I mean, just great job. I'm super honored to be able to know you and excited to be able to share this story with folks on the radio.
Absolutely. And I just want to say, man, I appreciate you. You're truly a beacon in the South, all over the country, and all over the world, but the South especially. I've had so many members that, have you looked at the Labor Valley Report? Absolutely, yes. So please keep doing what you're doing, brother. It's important.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your time. Is there anything else you want to leave us with before we let you go?
I just want to say that, again, as I said at the top of the hour, Teamsters raised me, Teamsters made me, TDU raised me. I think that the key to us Teamsters and moving forward to this 2028 contract is we have to have the education and the knowledge. And I encourage, if you're not a member of TDU, please sign up because it's just important that we're all on the same page. We have a network that we've created, and especially in the South and the Atlantic region, and you guys are going to see some big waves. And I'm so proud of that. We need that ultimate collective action from all our Teamster members at UPS.
All right. John Gacy, a member and steward at Teamsters Local 509 and a member of Teamsters for a Democratic Union. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, brother.
We're going to take a break, folks. We'll be right back to talk to nurses at a Minnesota rehab. Stay tuned. If you want a good-paying union job in construction or nuclear plant maintenance in North Alabama, then you need to talk to the Laborers International Union of North America, LIUNA Local 366. They're recruiting for jobs right now, so if you're interested, please apply online at liunalocal366.com or call their hiring hall at 256-383-2466. That's 256-383-2466. No experience is needed, and we offer free training, but you must be able to pass a background check and a drug test. Local hiring that grows our community with good-paying jobs and benefits is our mission. Live better, work union. Local 366. Feel the power. The Valley Labor Report is also supported by the Communication Workers of America. Learn more at cwa-union.org.
Support for this program is provided by the International Association for Machinists and Aerospace Workers, Local Lodge 44 in Decatur, Alabama. Learn more at iamaw44.org.
The Valley Labor Report is also sponsored by the United Automobile, Aerospace, and Agricultural Implement Workers of America, better known as the UAW. They are one of the largest and most diverse unions in North America, with members in virtually every sector of the economy. UAW-represented workplaces range from multinational corporations, small manufacturers, and state and local governments, to colleges and universities, hospitals, and private nonprofit organizations. The UAW has more than 400,000 active members and more than 580,000 retired members in the United States, Canada, and Puerto Rico. You can learn more about the UAW and join at uaw.org. The Valley Labor Report is also sponsored by Labor Notes. Labor Notes is a media and organizing project that has been the voice of union activists who want to put the movement back in the labor movement since 1979. You can learn more about Labor Notes at labornotes.org.
The attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have stood with the working people of Alabama for over 40 years, providing skilled legal representation for your workplace injury claims. When you are injured on the job, it can be a scary time. The attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have the experience to guide you through the process to make sure that you and your family are properly taken care of and your rights are protected. If you need help, call the attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs at 855-617-9333 or visit online at www.mtnj.com. No representation is made that the quality of legal services provided is greater than the quality of legal services provided by other law firms.
Support for this program also comes from the Mid-South Council of Retail, Wholesale, and Department Store Union. Learn more at rwdsu.info.
Union leaders, do you want a powerful website and mobile app built just for your members? The Union Active system, created by Unions America, makes it easy to share news and documents, send alerts, and keep your members engaged anytime, anywhere. Trusted by thousands of unions, Union Active streamlines communication so you can focus on what matters most, your members. With real-time updates, secure messaging, and custom features built for unions, you'll keep your members informed and engaged 24/7. Get Union Active today. Visit unionactive.com to learn more. Union Active, the ultimate website and communication system for unions.
Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old union has come in here to dwell.
Labor creates all wealth should go to labor, and you're listening to the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host is Adam Keller. Folks, we've got a great show for you. Great second half of the program. Already had a good show, I think. But we got a great second half of the program. We're going to be talking to a professor at a Catholic university about how their university is busting their union. We're also going to soon be talking to a couple of Minnesota nurses, or a Minnesota nurse, about how they were able to beat their boss's anti-union campaign. And we're going to be talking to a Minneapolis union member about how they've been spied on by the feds. Lots of stuff to talk about. Appreciate everybody hanging out with us in the chats. Union Gus, Jada, TWY87, Pinkerbell, HBX, and everybody else in the chat. Appreciate y'all for hanging out with us on Facebook and YouTube. Joe on YouTube, as always. Heather Joe on Facebook. Heather on Facebook. Thank you all for tuning in, hanging out with us. Let's see here. The Dancing Bread says greetings from Florida. Adam, do you have a couple of plugs for us?
I do have a couple plugs. Coming up next week on the 18th, Labor Notes has their workshop on what to do when your union breaks your heart. So that's a Zoom call on the 18th, I believe at 6 p.m. Central Time. So definitely check that out. Go to labornotes.org. Check out their events, their trainings. Always recommend those. Just another reminder that Tuesday, August 25th, will be the municipal elections in Huntsville if you live in District 2, 3, or 4. So make sure you show up and vote. Of course, September 7th is Labor Day. So we have Labor Day coming up on the 7th. That means the Sunday before then is Labor Sunday. That's a good day to do labor in the pulpit engagements. So reach out to us if you're interested in partnering on that. We know that on Labor Day proper, on the 7th, there's going to be a big Labor Day parade in the Shoals, and a lot of us from the Huntsville area will be heading out that way to check that out. And then to cap off that week, on Friday, September 11th, we have the Advancing Alabama Labor History Symposium in Auburn. Really excited about that. Just ran into someone this week down that way who had heard about it on the show. So I thought that was pretty cool. That someone in Auburn heard about it from the Valley Labor Report. Love to hear that. So yeah, check those events out. Put those on your calendar. And the last event I'll put on your calendar is September 26th is the annual meeting for Alabama Arise. So for all of you who are interested in participating in that, that's where they set the issue priorities for the next year. So if you're not already a member, good time to become one so you can vote on that.
All right. Every now and then we do a segment. We partner with Labor Lab. Labor Lab is an employer watchdog organization. They track union busters, the anti-union consultants who, harass and harangue and spy on and surveil workers as they try to win their unions. And they put out a couple of reports that included, in part, a Minnesota rehab center, Northridge. And so we wanted to talk to some people who were involved in that campaign. I think we have Isaac on the line now. I think we have Mikhail. We're still waiting on Isaac, but we can go ahead and talk to Mikhail about this campaign because, they really pulled out all the stops the company did to try to stop this campaign. And they were not successful. So we're really excited to talk to our guest and soon-to-be guests on the show this morning, Mikhail Dianang, a SEIU organizer, and then Isaac Dalto, a former nurse at Northridge, now a union organizer himself, will be coming on shortly. Mikhail, welcome to the program.
Hi there. Yeah, happy to be on.
It's great to have you on. I appreciate you taking the time. You're a little quiet, so I don't know if that's on you or us, but if we can try to turn him up a little bit, that would be great. Can you talk to us a little bit about the genesis of this campaign? Like, what made the workers at Northridge want to organize?
Yeah, honestly, conditions, right? It's a nursing home and a rehab center. But as far as some of the CNAs, they were working with 1 to 15 ratios, right? Where you pretty much got an entire hallway that you're in charge of, full of people that are older, full of people that need help bathing themselves, getting up and down, even like eating, right? And so yeah, honestly, like conditions, pay hadn't really changed. I think they were stuck at like $18 an hour around there. Oh, great, we've got Isaac on. Um, yeah, and even just like respect, like basic respect from management, right? And being treated like a human being. When you're working those kind of hours, doing that kind of work, you should be cared for. You should be heralded even. And so, yeah, those were some of the main reasons. Isaac, anything you would add for why folks organize?
Um, yeah, I mean, I'll just say that Northridge is a terrible place to work. Still is. When I started there in 2021, we were working in the long-term care unit with like 1 to 12 or 1 to 13 ratios, which is like, so you're already stretched really thin, and then it's just gotten worse over the years. We saw to the point where now we have women there working like 1 to 15 or 1 to 16 ratios. I mean, you can't.
Wow.
You can't provide good patient care that way. I mean, you get less than 30 minutes with every resident. There was an incident one time upstairs in the memory care unit where a man choked to death because nobody was watching him. But yeah, I mean, we're in a situation where like most of my coworkers are West African and like can't even go home to see their families because we have all this PTO accrued and nobody ever approves it for people to go on vacation. Like Mikhail said, there's people that are still making $17 or $18 an hour and have been stuck there for like 6 years. So I mean, because of that, there's like super high turnover all the time, and the place relies a lot on like agency workers that don't know the residents. So it's really unfair to us, and it's unfair to the people we're taking care of.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you talk a little bit about what are some of the things that a nurse at Northridge would do?
I mean, I'm a CNA. I'm not a nurse. I'm a nursing assistant. Someday I might be a nurse. But we like clothe people and bathe them and feed people that can't feed themselves, and like change people's diapers, empty people's colostomy bags. Give people bed baths, things like that.
Seems like pretty important work, pretty difficult work, and especially difficult when you're having to do all that. I mean, that's I just went through. My grandmother died recently, but over the last 3 years, I mean, we have sort of been. She hasn't been that bad except for like the last month, but I mean, we've been doing some of that stuff, and I can't imagine only having 30 minutes to do all of those things that need to be done for a person who can't take care of themselves, and and the neglect that would come with not having the time to properly take care of somebody, and then the guilt that would almost certainly impose on some of the nurses who are quote unquote on duty when like incidents like you were talking about happen, even though it's not their fault that they don't have enough people. I mean, certainly that must wear on their minds, right, Isaac?
Yeah, I mean, there's a psychological term for this, for the guilt that healthcare workers feel when you can't provide good care. It's called moral injury, and that's something like me and a lot of the people close to me have definitely experienced. Like, I mean, we had one resident who, obviously, I can't tell you his name, but he was, I mean, this man had multiple sclerosis and like couldn't really eat without great assistance. It might take like 45 minutes to finish feeding him. So people just didn't have time. People would feed him for 10 or 15 minutes and then move on to the next person. So this guy was like literally wasting away because just of like the constraints of the institution. And I felt some type of way about that for sure.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, it's like, your role as a nursing assistant is kind of to be a scapegoat for the stuff that doesn't get done, because there's a lot of pressure on you to finish your charting and to chart everything as if it's been done, because that's how the facility gets paid by Medicaid, right? Is that they look at our charting, and there's this kind of like tacit assumption that like, okay, like you better finish your charting, and that means you got to say everything that happened. And if you didn't have time to do something, like that's your fault for committing neglect. That's not the facility's fault for understaffing the place.
That's just terrible. And so then when y'all went public, I know that you don't work at Northridge anymore. I think you worked through the campaign, is my understanding. You can correct me if I'm wrong. But after the campaign went public, instead of allowing workers to, have a free and fair election and kind of decide on their own whether they want to unionize or not, they invested at the very least, over $250,000 fighting this campaign, between 300,000 and 400,000. What were some of the first signs that you noticed that they had hired union busters and that they were really going to go scorched earth during this campaign?
Well, they brought in this very cute husband-wife union busting team. Their names were Deneen Clay and Byron Clay. And at the time, they ran a company called Diverse Workforce Consultants. And when they brought them in, I guess first they had a big all-staff meeting where they announced that they were giving everybody a $1 raise. The administrator tried to act like she didn't know about the union yet at the time. And then at the very end of that meeting, she said, by the way, we're going to have this labor relations expert come in and talk to some of you guys the next week. And then we saw Deneen walking around the building, and they would pull like 4 or 5 workers off the floor at a time to have these little captive audience meetings in the conference room where they would show us a PowerPoint presentation about like basically it was just designed to create doubt in people. It was all about how risky the prospect of organizing is, and how bargaining is a gamble, and like union organizers are salesmen that will tell you anything. And but really, it's better off to stick with the devil, and you might be risking all the great benefits you already get for the union, so that the union can get what it wants. Like they were always they said very few things that were outright lies, but they showed us a bunch of slides that, like, when shown together, created the misleading impression that like the union is some third party company and they're trying to come in to take your money to get what they want. And we had a pretty small committee at the time. There were like 6 of us, really like 5 of us, if I'm honest. And we went to the very first meeting that Deneen and Byron did, and we like raised our hands and talked back and asked all these questions about like, well, why haven't there been raises in so long? How come Mission Health got rid of the matching 401k we used to have? Why are the staffing ratios so bad? And I felt good about that meeting. We brought like purple frosted donuts for SEIU Purple. But that was just the first one. And they would run like 8 of these meetings all day, every day, from like 9 to 5. They were pulling people off the floor and talking to them. The only people they never did this to was overnight shift. But everybody on AM and PM had to sit through one of these at least once. And it really like destroyed our support. I think before that started, our support in the facility was a mile wide and an inch deep. And everybody said they were for the union, but like, I don't think most of us had been like properly inoculated as to all the bullshit the boss was going to tell us.
Yep.
And then, people, I think people stopped supporting us, not because like they thought their existing benefits were so great or they thought the company was so great, but just because, they were able to plant that seed of doubt in people's heads and be like, wait, what if these union guys have ulterior motives they're not telling us about?
Right. Just a reminder, we are on FM radio. What were some of the, you mentioned that this really had an impact on the support for the union among the workers. That, a lot of them had not been inoculated properly. What were some of the most effective talking points for flipping somebody against the union, and how did you respond to them at the time, and how would you respond to those talking points, like hindsight 2020?
Well, we we did this campaign twice. We lost the first time around, and then we came back 3 years later, and spoiler alert, we won. But I think the most effective talking point was always, like I said, just sowing that uncertainty and being like, are you really willing to risk everything you have for the possibility of improvements? That, and also saying, the union is a business. The union has its own things that it wants. For example, do you know what a union security clause is? Do you know what dues checkoff means? And then saying all these things about dues and money and scare quotes. I mean, and what I would say to people, and what we did say to people, was like, look, like, you are the union. Like, this is us. We get to vote on all these decisions. We're never going to ask you to vote for a contract that has you losing stuff. The current state of like wages and benefits is the floor, and we're only going to fight for better than that. And also, like, what's going to happen if we do nothing? Like, what are we going to do if nothing changes? Like, this company. I mean, so when we organized the first time, they brought in the CEO from Tampa, Florida, like the night before the election, and he had a big all staff meeting, and everybody was like raising their hands and asking him stuff, and wanted to know, like, people really treated him like an authority that they could like turn to for like the straight dope and what was going on, right? And then the second, and he strongly implied that if people voted out the union, they were going to, or voted down the union, they would all get a raise. That never happened, and people are still making $17 an hour now, 4 years later.
Wow.
When we're in negotiations for our first contract, and so they sent him back again 4 years later, and he pulled the same song and dance. He had a big meeting. He said all the same things, about how like he's sorry things haven't been, he's gonna, whatever works in Montana might not work in Minnesota, and he's gonna make some changes around there. And this woman who wasn't even one of our supporters like raised her hand and said, "Hey, you told us 4 years ago in this same room that we were going to get a raise. Why have we never got a raise?" And I have to give this guy credit for winning the campaign for us, because what he said to all of us was, "Hey, I never promised you anything," which was, first of all, a lie, and also not what those ladies wanted to hear in that moment. And so, I was really nervous the night before the election. I thought it was going to be really close. I thought we were going to win or lose by like 1 or 2 votes. And instead, we clobbered them. We won by like 18 votes. It was like a 20% landslide. And I mean, I really think it was Northridge's election to lose, and boy, did they lose it,
What would your advice be for workers that are going through a union campaign like this one in combating the union busters and management's anti-union campaign?
I mean, I think you have to start from a foundation of really deep relationships of trust with the people around you. I think that's what we had the second time around that we didn't have the first time. Like, the first time we had a lot of support, but we didn't have like a strong committee that really trusted each other and was really locked in. And the second time around we had that, and we had it like, from people that had been through the fire of the first campaign, right? And weren't going to be fooled again, and had learned to like trust each other and trust the union.
Mikhail, is there anything that you would want to add to that from the organizer, from somebody sort of outside of the unit's perspective?
Yeah, I mean, it's always tempting to kind of stray away from your fundamentals, or, stray away from like what we know works, just to kind of make the campaign work, right? Like, you try to, oh, okay, we have like enough support. We're not quite at like a critical mass or like a supermajority, right? Or like, oh, we have like some supporters of the OC, and we can leave the group of Kenyans alone, or leave the group of Somalis alone. Like, stick to your fundamentals, right? Like, stick to having like a fully representative committee. Stick to folks that are leaders, right? That will have followers that are able to kind of step up and be a voice when their coworkers are scared. Yeah, and also, yeah, just build deep relationships with folks, right? Like, I still talk with Hannah and some members of the OC, even like after we won our election and, after going through everything. And I think those are really special relationships to me. So, yeah.
Isaac Dalto is a former CNA at Northridge Nursing and Rehab Center. Mikhail Dianang is an SEIU organizer. Isaac, Mikhail, please let us know once y'all are able to win your first contract. Really appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks a lot, Jacob.
All right, that's going to be it for the first half of the program, folks. Make sure you find us on Facebook and YouTube to continue listening. We got a great second half of the show lined up for you. Some really good guests. And send us a text, send us a voicemail if there's anything you want to add, or hang out with us in the chat. As Union Gus says, a bad boss is the best organizer. We're going to go into the second half of the program. Follow us there. If you don't, though, we appreciate your time, and we'll see you next week. I usually do, but it's fine.
Are we going to leave?
There's good news to you, I'll tell. How the good old union has come in here to dwell.
host. You are now in the host room and can...
This is Overtime, a production of the Valley Labor Report, the largest union talk radio and online news outfit in the South, coming to you from the heart of the Tennessee Valley in the Spice Radio Studios in Huntsville, Alabama, but now broadcasting across the Mason-Dixon in Minneapolis and Chicago on KTNF and WCPT, respectively. We're run by working people and for working people. My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host is Adam Keller. We appreciate you spending some time with us. We did go ahead and open the phone lines, 844-899-TVLR, if you want to call in. That's 844-899-8857. You can also leave us a voicemail at any time if we are not live. You can send us a written note at tvlr.fm/contact. Adam, there's been some news recently about student loans, right?
Yeah, there's a big coalition of unions are actually suing to block a new student loan rule. And I want to borrow from American Federation of Teachers here. They put out a press release about it, but there are multiple unions involved, including AFSCME, National Nurses United, and the AFL-CIO. So basically, you've got this coalition of unions who collectively represent hundreds of thousands of public service and healthcare workers, and they filed a lawsuit this week challenging the Department of Education's new Reimagining and Improving Student Education rule. Now, you got to love these names, right? Like, anytime it's that positive and rosy of a name, I'm already like suspicious of it.
Yeah, like how the Take Care of America's Veterans Act was a bill that would privatize the VA.
Right, yeah. The Patriot Act and all these things like that. Like So the Reimagining and Improving Student Education rule, what it actually does is set draconian new limits on the amount of federal student loans students can borrow for graduate education in some of our nation's most critical and understaffed professions. And it lawlessly compounds the problem by making many professional workers ineligible for the higher caps it sets for quote-unquote professional students. So, in other words, this will severely affect degrees in advanced practice nursing, public health, social work, library sciences, and others that are deemed to be non-professional. So it's going to limit the federal student loan support, which is going to make it harder to get more folks in these professions, right? It's already difficult to recruit people in these kind of professions. But to make it harder to get your degrees to even borrow to get it, which, that's bad enough. The fact that we're having to get in so much debt just to get our education, just to find a career path. But this is going to make the situation worse. AFT's president, Randy Weingarten, said, quote, "One of the most cynical, cruel components of the Trump tax bill was the cuts to the higher education student loan program. Now the effect is clear. By deprofessionalizing nursing, architecture, social work, teaching, and countless other careers, the Trump administration is eviscerating education access for poor and working class students and their families and dismantling pathways to the middle class. The court must strike down this administration's unlawful attack on college affordability and tell students they aren't valued and crushes their dreams. It harms communities across the country who rely on the services these students would provide." Of course, this is the same administration that cut health care to give billionaires more tax cuts. So, we'll see how that works out when you make it harder to recruit nurses and social workers and other public health and public education professionals. I wanted to report on that. We will see what happens in the courts, but that is that was filed this past week. And there was another bit of news I wanted to share from AFT. This past week, the Trump administration unveiled a proposal to scrap hundreds of federal regulations governing Head Start, which is the early education program, serves roughly 700,000 of the nation's poorest and most vulnerable children. It's a program that's been around for decades now. Thousands of AFT members work in Head Start, and countless other K-12 schools across the country rely on the program's federal funding stream. And, really, really concerned about this. This came across my radar this week, and I'm very concerned about this because early education for children makes such a huge impact in their lives, like their academic future, their future period. As I said, these are some of the poorest and most marginalized kids in the country that benefit from Head Start. It's been around for nearly 6 decades. It's called Head Start for a reason, right? It's to give kids a head start. It's to give kids, some tools to stay on track and to be prepared for preschool and kindergarten, right? And it's really, really concerning that they're talking about gutting the federal regulations for this program. They've tried to kill Head Start before. A lot of people spoke up. Now they're trying to set the program up for failure by diluting the standards and capping what the programs can spend on staff, burying providers in pointless paperwork, and then using these self-inflicted wounds to justify another round of cuts. And AFT went on to say, slashing the administrative spending cap from 15% to 5% without a dime more in funding isn't streamlining anything. It's a mandate to do more with less, and it's the kids who will pay for it in bigger classrooms with fewer educators. This is a test of what we value as a country. Will we stand with our members and fight in Congress, in the courts, in the court of public opinion until the promise of Head Start is fully restored? So wanted to share those updates from AFT. Really concerned about this Head Start issue. Just to attack the least of these. It's really a big concern. I know Public School Strong sent out an action alert this past week. You are able to submit public comments. So I would encourage folks to do that. You can go to publicschoolstrong.org, make sure you're on their list and get plugged in. Shout out to NNU, AFT, AFL-CIO, AFSCME for fighting the good fight on the student loan rule, because it just seems like it's going to make the situation worse. And I can't help but think that we had some progress on student loan debt years ago. In fact, I would have personally benefited from it. I came really, really close to having my student loan debt forgiven. But some folks fought it and sued about it, and it didn't happen. So that's thousands of dollars I'll continue paying for a long, long time. Appreciate that, Trump. But yeah, that's where we're at.
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy.
I don't think we even need student loan debt as just like a general rule.
Society has progressed beyond the need for student
loan debt. It seems like we could have higher education, whatever that looks like for people, right? Because not everyone wants to go to a university or a college, and I respect that. But I think people ought to be able to get whatever kind of education they need and want. And it shouldn't be a lifetime of debt, a debt sentence to get it.
The Dancing Bread says that the Florida primary is on the 18th. Oliver Larkin in Florida's 25th district is DSA endorsed, also a union member, been on the program before. And
pretty young fellow. I think he's younger than me, running for big seats. So that's really impressive. Shout out to Florida.
Angie Nixon is a lifelong Floridian running for Senate on abolishing ICE and Medicare for all.
Oh, wow. Love to see it.
Neat.
Love to see it. There does seem to be an appetite for change in this country right now. We'll see what happens with some of these pending elections, but I think people are tired. People are tired of things just not working. They're tired of everything costing more. They're tired of wages not keeping up. I mean, here we are. The AFL-CIO is putting out their Pay Watch report, talking about this massive disparity. The rich are getting richer. We aren't. We're getting more and more squished from both sides, right? Our wages aren't keeping up. Everything's costing more. Folks are in medical debt. Folks are in student loan debt, credit card debt. Most folks are one emergency away from being really up the creek. So it's not a good time for most working class people in this country. And I think that is our opportunity, those of us who care about positive change and want to see a stronger labor movement. That's our opportunity, because we need more people organizing their workplace. We need more people organizing in their community, more people organizing on their college campuses, right? Organizing their churches and neighborhoods. We need people organizing everywhere, because mass engagement is how we actually change things, right? If we look back at history, every great period of progress in this country, it came from a lot of everyday people, right? We remember the big leaders, the big names. We remember Dr. King and Eugene Debs and some of these big time leaders, but there were so many other people there with them. And that's what I want to just encourage folks to think about, is like, what can you do? How can you fit in? And then who can you bring along with you and educate and get to participate and bring in change, whatever that looks like in your community.
Well, and you were talking about, the lots of, rank and file activity during periods of progressive change in our country, at least, which is the country that presumably both of us know the most history of. And not only has there been like rank and file activity during huge periods of big progression, there's been radical rank and file activity that has gone by. The people identify themselves as socialists or communists or radicals or revolutionaries, anarchists, and that's why even as somebody who I consider myself somebody that's anti-capitalist. Even that's like a relatively new thing for me in the course of my sort of political work. It wasn't until I didn't start kind of self-identifying that way until I think it was 2023. And even before that, I was very friendly to the rise of, the DSA and the socialist left, because my reading of history, you look at when were the periods of American history where we made the most progress socially and economically? The Revolutionary War, the Civil War, Reconstruction, the Civil Rights Movement, the Great Society, the New Deal. All of these periods of American history included huge portions of the rank and file citizenry that were agitated and activated by and supportive of ideologies that were, and in some cases still are, considered radical.
You've always had people who could work outside the system and people who could work inside the system, and it's always been a blend of both in my reading of history, right? You have those people who are considered more radical, who are maybe pushing the envelope, who are leading the way. You have the folks who are finding ways to fit in and navigate the existing structures, right? And, running for local office in government or running for union positions, right? You always have had that mix, that dynamic. And I think it really takes all kinds. It's not that I've always had the philosophy that it's not really my role to tell you, which lane to get in, as long as you're moving. As long as you're moving, right? It's whatever lane you get in, the far left lane, closer to the middle lane, wherever you're at, as long as you're moving forward and you're actually building power for everyday people, because people power is the only thing that does change this, right? Like all those periods you just listed, it was people power. People stood up, people organized and took collective action to make things work better for us. That's what we have to do.
We've got our guest on the line now. Jeremy Cruz is a member of the American Association of University Professors, also an associate professor of theology and religious studies at St. John's University in New York. Jeremy, welcome to the program.
It's a pleasure to be with you. Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you on. I appreciate your time. Your university has recently, fairly recently, I think it was back in February or March, unilaterally decertified your union, and that upended like 50 years, half a century of precedent at the university of support for collective bargaining for its staff. Could you talk, before we get into, the last couple of years, could you talk about a little bit about what the relationship between management and workers and unions on campus was like before the last couple of years?
Yes, and I'll start by just saying I really appreciate your program. You've got an informative show that energizes people for transformative action. It's so good to be here, and it's especially important to have such a show in the Deep South. And so I want to just express my gratitude to you, Jacob and Adam, both for the work that you do.
Appreciate it.
And thank you for giving attention to our struggle at St. John's, which is a struggle we're seeing repeated all over the country in higher education. Faculty were shocked and appalled by what the administration did in February. And the one correction I have to give is that they didn't decertify us because they don't have that authority. But what they did do was basically take their ball and go home. They just said, we no longer recognize your union, and so we're not going to talk to you anymore. And so they walked away from the contract bargaining table after more than a year of contract negotiations. They would love to think that they have the authority to decertify us or to be the arbiter of whether or not we have a valid faculty labor union, but that's not actually the case. This was basically an administrative temper tantrum, and they believe that it's worth spending an incredible amount of money on a union busting law firm called Proskauer Rose to fight us in the courts and basically say, to invent a novel legal theory and say that faculty at St. John's who've had a legally recognized union for nearly 6 decades, that suddenly we don't have that right.
And the argument that they're resting on is that because of the First Amendment, because they're a Catholic private college, that's why they don't have to bargain with you. Can you talk to us? Can you expand a little bit on that legal argument? And, I think that the union's position is that you disagree with that they do have the legal obligation to bargain with you. And we'll talk about do they have an obligation as a Catholic institution to bargain with you a little bit later, but can you give us the legal argument that they're putting forward and why the AAUP disagrees with it?
Yes, the administration, led by Father Brian Shanley, bless his heart, thinks that the First Amendment means that religious institutions, because they're religiously affiliated or inspired, don't have to honor certain kinds of labor or civil rights law. And so basically what they're drawing on is an administrative policy of the first Trump administration that argued that religiously affiliated institutions didn't have to have labor unions anymore. And a far-right Supreme Court held up the right of the National Labor Relations Board to create that policy. The Biden administration repealed it, and then the second administration, Trump administration, brought it back. Now, what's interesting and what sets us apart from other Catholic universities that have used this as a window to union bust, some Catholic universities have seen an opportunity here to union bust where they haven't had one before. Our labor rights at St. John's that we rely on come from New York State. They're not coming from the federal law or the NLRB. And so when we certified our unions, we certified them under New York State, which explicitly, intentionally fills any gap or ambiguity with regard to religious institutions. So we do have the right as a religiously affiliated institution under New York State law. So essentially, the Father Shanley is taking this a step even further than the Trump administration, and they're trying to claim and argue in court under entirely novel sets of legal arguments that federal law overrides states' rights to create their own labor laws.
Wow, that's pretty incredible and frustrating to see, from a Catholic institution, because I think that you would argue that the institution's Catholicness is, whatever the law says. I think it sounds like you've got a pretty good legal argument that they're wrong about the law, but absent the law, even if they're right about the law, their religious, the teachings of the Catholic Church would seem to indicate that they should engage in collective bargaining. And there's certainly no law in the United States that says that a Catholic institution can't collectively bargain. So it's obviously an option that they could take and that they have taken for nearly the last 60 years, as you said, and that you would argue that Catholicism teaches that they should take. Can you tell us about that? Like, what are the teachings of the church that say that you should have a right to organize?
You're completely correct. And as a professor of theology and religious studies, my area of expertise of teaching and research is actually in the area of Catholic social teaching, and in particular on the relationship between Catholicism and social movements, Catholicism and labor movements. So what you just summarized, you would get an A in my course because you understand the general argument here. You're completely correct that what Father Shanley is doing at St. John's University is entirely antithetical to a very long, more than 100-year Catholic social tradition and teachings specifically around workers' rights, worker empowerment, and the central role that labor unions play in preserving and promoting the common good in a society. There is nothing in Catholic social teaching that undergirds or justifies what Father Shanley is doing. And that's why when he argues and explains it, he makes veiled claims about financial challenges of the university or the need for flexibility, which, by the way, is not a Catholic social value in Catholic social teaching. Flexibility for management is not a core tenet of Catholic social teaching. He's not really relying on Catholic social teaching because he's not going to find a whole lot there for what he's doing. Catholic social teaching has affirmed the importance of labor unions and worker associations and collective bargaining for many decades. Further, Catholic social teaching today does not even uplift unions as the ideal or endpoint when it comes to worker empowerment. Catholic social teaching affirms and promotes worker-owned and worker-managed enterprises. The whole framework of Catholic social teaching is built on values like worker empowerment, democracy, participation in the workplace decision-making, shared responsibility, contributions to the common good. You can't have any of that with disempowered workers.
Right. Talking about the financial constraints and, like you said, the need for flexibility, that's not a Catholic social teaching, but the financial constraints, it's not as if the union is arguing in principle that you can't do this or that thing. Maybe it's possible that there do need to be layoffs of the staff to keep the institution running. It's possible that there do need to be budget cuts. It's possible that maybe the leadership of the university needs to take a pay cut. I don't know, right? But that's not. But those are all things that can be negotiated and that are negotiated collectively all the time. We just had on, I think it was last week or the week before, a president of a local United Steelworkers union in Tuscaloosa about how they're engaging in impact bargaining over the closure of their plant. They're losing 1,100 jobs in Tuscaloosa, but guess what? They're still bargaining over it. That's collective bargaining does not mean that you can't cut the budget. It just means that the workers are involved and they have a voice in the process and the changes that happen in the university.
Correct. St. John's is not in any kind of current or near-term financial trouble. Financial analysis of the university over and over again shows that the university is in a very strong position. Forbes magazine just gave it a grade of a B+ in comparison to other, in terms of its financial health in comparison to other universities across the country. Anytime bosses are trying to advance austerity measures and to squeeze workers and to engage in power grabs, they always claim that there's some financial need. There's no financial need at St. John's. And analysis after analysis of the university's financials have shown that. But this is what we're seeing across the country in all sectors for all workers, and we're seeing it certainly in higher ed. And everywhere that workers stand up and stand together and fight back, we're seeing workers win. And so, the AAUP, our union, we've never had more members. We are at historic highs in terms of membership. People are fired up. They're not taking this laying down because they see how this is connected to a anti-education agenda that is sweeping the country, and that and they also see that higher education is the sector where workers are unionizing faster than any other sector in the country. And so they know that the landscape is favorable. My colleagues know that the landscape is favorable, and we are working together, and we're building power, and we intend to use it.
The NNU released a report recently about, I think it was Ascension, and Ascension is a sort of ostensibly Catholic institution. It's a hospital chain, and the investments that they have, that they've been engaging in, that NNU argues, National Nurses United argues, go against Catholic social teaching, investing in tobacco, arms, and things like that. And, so my mother-in-law is Catholic. I sent that report to her just because I thought she would be interested in it. And she said that a lot of hospitals that were started by the church were originally actually sort of Catholic in ownership and structure and identity, but they're now much less so. They're really like Catholic in name only. They might have a couple laity on the board, but they're not really over, the Vatican doesn't have control over them kind of in the way, or the bishop doesn't have control over them in the way that maybe they used to. And they're basically Catholic in name only now. Is there a similar dynamic at play with St. John's, or is there real, I mean, you've used the term father with reference to the leader of St. John's. So it sounds like maybe St. John's is more sort of actually Catholic than some of these other institutions. Is that right?
Certainly. I think two things can be true at the same time. On the one hand, we are seeing large Catholic institutions that sit on a lot of money. St. John sits on $1 billion endowment. We are seeing those organizations, those institutions increasingly run like neoliberal multinational corporations. That is true whether we're talking about a Catholic-owned cemetery or a hospital or a nonprofit organization. The logics of financial capital are, of big finance. The logics of big finance are impacting institutions across our country, and that's no less true for Catholic institutions. On the other hand, St. John's University has long been known for its Catholic and Vincentian mission. The Vincentians are the religious order. They go back to the Vincent de Paul. They're a religious order that, and it's a university that has been known for its social mission. The Society of St. Vincent de Paul are the people who kind of initiated food pantries and soup kitchens and those kind of things. And over time, organizations connected to the Vincentian order have focused more and more on root causes of poverty. And so St. John's has loved over the years to talk about its mission to immigrant families, to first and second generation immigrants and the children of immigrants, and educating them and social uplift, and often uses a rhetoric of social justice and real emphasis on social mission. And it's the faculty and the staff who carry out that mission. The faculty and the staff are responsible for thinking, programming, collaborating in order to carry out that mission. And so what we're seeing at St. John's right now, yes, on the one hand, administrators are trying to pull us increasingly in a direction that you would see at any other secular, big finance-driven university. And on the other hand, we have faculty and staff and students standing up and saying, no, we believe in the mission of this university. It's Catholic and Vincentian values, and we're going to defend them.
You mentioned earlier that the AAUP now has at St. John's the highest membership that it ever has. And so can you talk to us a little bit more about how your union is fighting back against the derecognition by St. John's?
Yeah, we're swinging back at this attack with both arms, and one arm is the legal fight, and that is expensive and long and slow because we're fighting a big a big institution, and now they've hired Prescott Rose, who professional sports leagues call in when they want to try to union bust really powerful athletic unions. Ivy League universities call them in when they want to union bust. So that's and we also have to deal with the fact that, in the legal system, judges have been installed who are backed by billionaire interests who are interested in really expanding and warping the meaning of religious freedom in order to crush civil rights and labor rights. And so, that's going to be a slow and very deliberate fight. So that's one arm that we're swinging back with in the courts, and we're very confident in our legal case. But on the other hand, we're building faculty power. And faculty power, worker organizing, organizing education workers is how we got our unions in the first place. St. John's faculty were the first higher education faculty to strike back in the 60s. In the mid 60s, St. John's faculty had a multi-year strike. That's ultimately what led to us getting our unions, not a legal case, not relying on lawyers and judges, but rather faculty saying, our labor is our power. And if we stand in solidarity, if we stand united, we will advance our values and we will change this institution. That was the beginning of faculty governance at the university. Before that strike, faculty had basically no say in the operations of the university. It was a handful of priests who called the shots at the university. And what we saw was a gradual expansion of participation in workplace decision-making as a result of that strike. Obviously, more just compensation and healthcare and things like that resulted. But, most important was that workers were respected and their dignity was respected as professionals, and they became participants in the decision-making of the workplace. And we ended up with a very different and better St. John's. The St. John's much more committed to its social mission.
How's the community responded?
The support has been incredible. We've had allies from other unions come out and support us. We've had people reach out to us and say, I was among the faculty who were in that strike in 1965. I was, my dad was in that strike. We just had an article published in the National Catholic Reporter where the son of one of the faculty who formed our labor union wrote an article talking about that time and how St. John's faculty find ourselves back in a very similar situation today, 60 years later. Students have been turning out. It's taken some time for students to understand how this impacts them. But when we connect with students and parents, they understand that union busting means faculty losing influence over academic decisions, over program creation, over program closure, over, we have fewer hours and less availability for mentoring students. We have more temp workers, part-time faculty who have to work multiple jobs at multiple universities in order to keep food on the table. And that means they're less available for meeting with students and mentorship and support. Students understand that this is an attack on the mission of the university and on the quality of their education. And the university is trying. I really appreciate the attention you all have been giving to AI and what a disaster this is for workers. And the university is currently trying to build an AI-dependent university and to build a cheap counterfeit of a St. John's education. They call it St. John SJU Online, and this is all part of trying to deprofessionalize higher education, to bust workers, and to rely on workers who are contingent, temporary, very vulnerable. And when we sit down with students and parents and explain that, hey, you're paying tens of thousands of dollars for this education, and this is what the administration is trying to do to it, they get it. They get it very quickly because they see how this stuff is being pushed across the economy and how it's impacting the job market that they're going to be entering as well.
Is there anything that listeners can do to help?
Oh, certainly. So we've had a lot of support. We have a petition. If you just Google St. John's AAUP, or if you use a better search engine than Google, St. John's AAUP Action Network. Our Action Network page has all the actions that people can take. We have a petition there. When people sign our petition, that gets them on our mailing list. And then, as we'll be back to campus in 2 or 3 weeks, a lot more action will be happening, and that will be the way that people can receive updates and know what's going on. We've had multiple rallies. We had a rally at Madison Square Garden. We've had rallies on campuses. We want the university community to turn out and make their voices heard. The petition is delivered to the Board of Trustees and to the administration, but that also gets people on our mailing list to know what else is coming up. And we certainly have a lot more action planned for the fall. On Instagram, we're at St. John's AAUP, St. John's AAUP. That's another place where people can follow. You can also find us on Facebook, St. John's chapter of AAUP. Those are our main social media accounts, but the Action Network page is where people can see the full narrative of what's going on at St. John's. They can see the 40+ media articles covering our struggle since February. They can see all the latest calls to action there. So it really starts with signing our petition, sharing the links and video from this show, and we've had a lot of alumni and past people who are connected to St. John's in the past who've heard about us and heard about what's going on and asked how they can get involved through shows like your own. So we really appreciate the coverage.
Jeremy Cruz is a member of the American Association of University Professors at St. John's University in New York, also an associate professor of theology and religious studies. Jeremy, thank you for your time.
So good to be with you. Thank you both.
Appreciate it. We've got our other guest on the line now. Excited for this conversation, even though it's also about a terrible story. But I appreciate his time this morning to talk to us about it. Paul K.D. is a Minneapolis resident, executive board member of the United Food and Commercial Workers, UFCW Local 663, and the proprietor of the Twin Cities Labor Report. Paul, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you on. Appreciate it. Also, thank you for the small tour of Minneapolis that you gave me when I was up there. It was I appreciated it. 15 community members, many of whom are members of unions, are now on trial for their efforts to protest ICE. And the New York Times reported last week on some of the information about how these folks were identified and the lengths to which that investigation went, investigating and infiltrating unions and community groups engaged in protected First Amendment activity. Can you expand a little bit on that and what all has been revealed in these court documents that the New York Times reported on last week?
Sure. So last month, I remember being on vacation at the time, and my phone starts buzzing, and it turns out that the Department of Justice had indicted 15 people here in the Twin Cities on very trumped up charges, as I would say, of crimes and misdemeanors. I'm not exactly sure what the charges are. I think it's conspiracy to impede an officer or something like that, which I hadn't heard of before. And many of them are union members. I think 8 out of the 15 indicted are. Many of them have been active in the labor movement. I'm proud to say many of them I would call friends. And this was seen as a huge attack on the entire labor movement and the community of Minnesota that had stood up to this terrible invasion, which is what I would say, invasion and occupation by the federal government we had in January that killed 2 of our own, Sister Renee Good and Brother Alex Party, who was a union member at the VA hospital here. Once that happened, there was obviously a lot of kind of natural questions about why the 15 had been targeted, why they had been arrested, what lengths the government had gone to indict these people. They had descriptions of large terabytes of data, descriptions of unindicted co-conspirators in the indictment. And this week, a motion filed in court revealed that these indictments were part of something larger than I think any of us could have really imagined, which was indeed, I would say, the largest attempt at federal surveillance of social movements and of unions since the days of COINTELPRO and McCarthyism.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty, I mean, folks should really go and read the New York Times report. It's pretty crazy the lengths to which the government was going to spy on and infiltrate unions and community groups in Minneapolis. Did any of that surprise you? Or, like, at the time, did you sort of expect that, there were a sprinkling of people kind of wherever you were that were federal agents?
That's a good question. It's like many people who have read their labor history, have read history of the 60s, of the 70s, who have had family members and acquaintances who have talked about this. I talk about I don't talk about this every day, but my great grandparents had FBI files on them. I remember we once the Cold War was over, we looked at them and they were very small, but this has been going on for a while. That being said, it is really shocking to hear that you personally were spied on, as is the case, and the degree to which nearly every public meeting in the Twin Cities, as it seems from these documents, was of interest. These federal agents infiltrated many public meetings. Again, very public, open to everybody. Not exactly a place where you're announcing crimes, right? But people engaged in completely, legal civil protest activities or just regular meetings of activist groups and unions. They followed a speaking tour around the country of people from Minneapolis and scanned license plates at stops. I mean, this is really obscene. They subpoenaed financial records of the CWA and of, I believe, 4 SEIU locals here in the state and nationally. And as it says in the Labor Notes article, CWA Local 7250 sent undercover agents to enter their office, infiltrate meetings they co-sponsored, and surveilled one of the officers. Me, along with many others in the labor movement, were very proud to organize a large meeting in February called the Workers' Assembly to Defeat ICE. Multiple unions sponsored this, multiple community organizations. It was held at the United Labor Center, where many unions have headquarters here. It was an overflow crowd, over 300 people. And we did something maybe unique, or I don't know about unique, but very rare in the labor movement, which is we had a broad, open, democratic discussion by the rank and file over next steps the entire movement should take. I learned this week that there were 4 undercover agents there surveilling us, taking detailed notes on the political discussions that were had, what kind of people were there, who they saw, what was being decided on. I would really hesitate to proclaim that, that was, I was expecting something like that. No, that should give us all some pause.
Yeah, I mean, that would just be so crazy to read about a meeting that I was at personally and see that there were 4 goons in the crowd taking notes about what me and my sisters and brothers were talking about when we're trying to defend our community. I mean, it's yeah, I mean, it's crazy. You mentioned the Labor Notes article. You were interviewed for it. The title of the piece is Federal Spies Hunt Minnesota Unions in Search of Conspiracy but Find Solidarity. It's by Luis Leon. Folks should read it. It has basically kind of the collection of the labor movement's response, both nationally and internationally, with the SEIU and the Communication Workers of America, the CWA International President, Claude Cummings, said, "We are part of the proud tradition of ordinary Americans who join together in union halls and church basements to make this country better, but our values of unity of community are under attack by a president and his DHS that sends government spies to surveil community meetings in church basements. CWA is a union with a long history of standing up to bullies and billionaire bosses. We will not be intimidated, and we will not be silenced in our solidarity with our members, with our communities, and with our neighbors." President of the Minnesota AFL-CIO, Bernie Burnham, is also quoted saying that, opposing the administration's spying on the labor movement, and as are you and Kieran Knutson, a local CWA president. And so it seems like the response to this from the labor movement, sort of like the original protest, has been pretty broad. That, there's not, it doesn't seem like there are really any sections of the labor movement that are sort of trying to throw folks under the bus. Everybody seems to be standing up for each other.
Yeah, so far, which is great. I mean, the thing about Minnesota is we really stick by each other. We had a few months of serious trauma bonding earlier this year, and I personally don't know anyone in the city who wasn't, affected by this incredible invasion in some way. And
yeah, Paul, I mean, you mentioned the people in Minneapolis and Minnesota are very close, and Chris Rufo, the right-wing anti-public education activist, has said on Twitter that that's likely due to your poor genetic stock as people of, Scandinavian descent.
Yeah, well, I'm Jewish, so I'm used to people accusing me of poor genetic stock. And although, I do have some GI issues, that is, part of it. Yeah, I mean, to be frank, that was in the 1930s, that was a big criticism of us too. We were not going to be loyal subjects of the empire. So, yeah, sorry.
I just thought it was very funny that that there were so many white people supporting immigrants that they had to resort to anti-Scandinavian racism. I mean, it's been a minute since we've had that. So.
Busting that one out.
Yeah, it's. But I'm sorry, I interrupted you. Continue.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would just say, beyond us, there was, in January, every single person of color I knew had to carry their passport around because there were armed goons in balaclavas disappearing them if they didn't. So, that's going to lead to a certain feeling of solidarity among people impacted by that, because what we encountered was outrageous. And luckily, it was, I think, momentarily defeated here, at least one approach. ICE is still running rampant around our communities. I think last month was a high of arrests in the Trump presidency. And I don't see much evidence that the overall agenda of Trump of mass demonization of immigrants, of anyone he doesn't like, is going to end anytime soon.
We talked about the labor movement's response. It's been pretty unifying, pretty supportive of the people that are being targeted. How about the community in Minnesota? I guess you kind of touched on that a little bit, but how are rank and file, maybe non-union members reacting to this story?
That's a good question. I would say overall, again, there's been a ton of solidarity. I believe that we have a defense fund for the Minnesota 15 that has raised over $350,000 already. One thing we're good at here in Minneapolis is putting up random posters all over town. I'm seeing a lot of Defend the 15 posters scattered around town. On the other hand, I did see a quote, I believe from Bernie Burnham, the AFL-CIO president, that said something along the lines of, "It didn't work with McCarthy, it won't work now." Well, I have to say, like, as someone who has read history, the Red Scare was very damaging to our movements. COINTELPRO was very damaging to our movements. The punitive powers of the state can be extremely, extremely damaging. And so I think a lot of people will, take this in the spirit of solidarity. We'll take this in stride, but we have to really, really fight back against this. And I think this calls all people, regardless of political opinion or belief, they are really targeting the working class here, and they are targeting unions, right? So we need to fight back overall as a full movement. I've had the privilege of meeting people who have been targeted by the state in this country, of other countries. And I've also, recently had, I would call it the privilege of accompanying people going for asylum hearings, going for regular immigration business to the Whipple building here in the cities, which is where federal immigration services are headquartered. And it's a pretty not fun time most of the time to see the power of the state and how much work is being put in to kick working class people out of a country they've contributed so much to.
Yes, absolutely. You gave us the link to the fundraiser. We'll put that in our show notes. We'll put it in the chat as well. But if people are just listening to this and you're not able to pull up the show notes or anything, you should be able to Google Chuffed, CHUFFED, and Legal Defense Fund for MN Anti-ICE Organizers. Like you said, it's raised, I'm looking at it now, $383,909. The goal is $500,000. Like you said, no doubt this is going to be a very expensive legal battle because the force of the state is very, very powerful, and so it's going to take a lot, especially when you're talking about the legal avenue with the right-wing judiciary that we have, to be able to fight back against that. And so we'll share that. Paul, is there anything else that you would want to share with us about, the story or how people are reacting to it? I guess maybe one question that I have is there is a right wing in Minnesota. Minnesota is certainly trending more blue, I think, but there's still very strong Republican support in parts of the state. Are, the conservatives and Republicans in Minnesota and Minneapolis, like, happy to see this happening? Or is there enough of sort of an outside enemy effect that even Republicans and conservatives in the state are, sort of being like, well, this is kind of an invasion by the federal government in our state?
That's a good question. I would say among political candidates and the Republican Party as a whole, the general attitude is to not talk about what happened over the last 3 months. I think that is an indication of them not having very good answers to the really important questions being posed, such as why there's been no progress in the investigation of the murders of Renee Good and Alex Preddy, why ICE, in fact, has continued to murder people, as we saw in Maine, in Texas. They don't have answers to that. I'm sure there are people who are kind of viewing this maybe as evidence that this whole movement was really being done by I think the title of the investigation by the federal government was Operation Puppet Master.
Yeah.
Now, if you actually look at their conspiracy chart that was shared in these documents, it was a list of many groups involving a small punk bike shop, as well as the AFL-CIO, the DSA, the state white collar public sector employee union. I don't know. That's a strange conspiracy to me, but maybe some people will believe it. So we'll see. If there's any, if I'm able to, I will say I'll give one shout out to the Chisago County social workers who have been on strike for over 100 days. Is one of the longest public sector strikes in Minnesota history with Teamsters Local 320. I would encourage people to read up about that story. Today they told me they might be listening to it on the picket line. Hopefully they have something better to do on the picket line. But the Starbucks workers in Roseville, Minnesota are going on strike today in a courageous stand. So I would ask people to continue supporting them and Starbucks Workers United as well.
Absolutely. If either of those groups of workers want to call in at any time, you can leave us a voicemail at 844-899-TVLR. That's 844-899-8857. And if you're listening live, you can go ahead and call in now. Adam, were you about to say something?
I was just going to tell you thank you for all the work that you're doing, and thank you for letting us know what's going on. Minnesota continues to be an inspiration for many of us across the country, the solidarity of your movement and the organizing that's happening. So we're going to do our part to spread the word here in the South and try to, shore up support because, as you pointed out, this is something we can't let stand. And I totally agree with your assessment. The Red Scare absolutely worked on many levels to hurt many, many people and hold back the progress of this country and this movement. And we can't let it happen again.
Both Red Scares.
All of them. The many at this point, right? From Haymarket on to today. We can't let it happen. We can't be scared or deterred. We've got to stick together. So thanks for all you're doing, brother.
Paul KD is an executive board member of the UFCW Local 663 and proprietor of the Twin Cities Labor Report on Substack. Paul, thank you for your time.
Thanks a lot.
All right, 844-899-TVLR is the phone number if anybody wants to call in. Adam, have you got anything else you wanted to talk about?
I think it's fine to leave it there, honestly. I want to sit with that for a bit because it's really scary. I think about it in Huntsville, the Huntsville, Alabama context. Huntsville is like Pentagon South, and there's a large presence of federal agencies, including
to get 1,000 more spooks with the FBI coming here.
Yeah, and that concerns me. I mean, on the bright side, most of our meetings are so damn small, we'll probably figure out who they are when some strange faces show up who are a little extra clean cut. But we'll see. It's very, very troubling in this country, and the fact that they're making such a big deal out of it lets me know they're scared. I think they're scared. I think they're scared that people are waking up and are ready for change. So we have to keep pushing.
Yep. All right. Well, I do think that's going to be it for us this week, folks. Appreciate everybody tuning in. We will be back next week and look forward to talking to you then. Solidarity forever.